I wanted to say was that if you have wings, why not fly?
If I asked you to take my virginity, would that be a problem?
No, I don't see a problem.
You have to ask him if he wanted to have sex with me.
Yeah,
My name is Joe.
Hi, Joe.
And I'm a nymphomaniac. Sex addict. We say sex addict.
I know that. What?
Would it be all right if I show the children the whoring bed?
I've never met a bad human being.
Well, you have now.
That's not how it goes. Most people don't scream until they hit the...
Perhaps the only difference between me and other people was that I've always demanded more from the sunset. More spectacular colors when the sun hit the horizon. That's perhaps my only sin.
Hello, welcome to Movie Humpers. My name, Bob Sham.
My name, Angela. Weird when you do it like that.
My name, the sounds you hear, dogs probably. This is the end of our European vacation, so we came home. We're back home, and now we're going to have just filthy, dirty sex. We're going to, like, just fuck everyone. We're going to fuck hundreds, thousands of people. We're S-ing them off. We're getting DP'd. We're going through the gamut. And
filling all the holes.
We're filling all our holes, all three of them. Not only do I want all my holes filled, but I want hundreds of dicks so small that they can fuck the pores in my skin.
When she said fill all of my holes, what if he had stuck 2 fingers up her nose?
Wow, what kind of nymphomaniac doesn't do one nostril fucking? I thought she was a pro. Wow. Yeah, we are. Maybe you can guess what we're talking about. We're talking about the last movie in Lars von Trier's Depression trilogy, as he has dubbed it. This is our 9th von Trier movie. We have 3 left. After this, we'll be discussing, I believe he calls it the America Land of Opportunity trilogy, which he has 2 named in that trilogy, and a 3rd one he hasn't named for it yet, but we're going to include The House That Jack Built, about a movie about a serial killer. That will be our last ever Von Trier discussion.
Ever.
Maybe. I feel like I should be with Von Trier and Stellan Skarsgård. He shows up in half these movies, right? And he's been showing up in a lot of other movies we discussed lately as well. Yes. I feel like we should be invited to some of these people's 3rd weddings with how much seem to be getting acquainted with them. We see everyone's dicks here. Everyone's dicks and pussies.
Yes. At the end of this year, have we seen all of Lars von Trier's films?
I think all films except for documentaries, and we haven't seen any of the Kingdom series that runs in his home country, which is supposed to be pretty good.
That's a television show.
At least the early ones, yeah, about like a haunted insane asylum or something.
Then the answer is we've seen all the movies after this year.
Not documentary. There's few documentaries.
That's kind of a different. I know we're counting
is
documentaries now. Well, kind of.
Sure, I guess so.
Because at least he's not. He could be throwing his spin on a story, but he's not making it up.
From what I believe we have seen all of his feature films. It does work out to about a dozen.
It more shows you what interests him in the world as opposed to what's coming out of his own brain in his documentaries, I would imagine.
We're talking about the movie Nymphomaniac from 2013 by Lars von Trier. One of 12 Lars von Trier movies we will be discussing before the end of the year. The dreary year of Lars von Trier, as we call it. This one is written by Lars von Trier, and it stars a whole mess of people. Charlotte Gainsbourg, Stellan Skarsgård, Stacy Martin, Shia LaBeouf, Christian Slater, Jamie Bell, Uma Thurman, Willem Dafoe, Mia Goth. You remember who Jamie Bell was? Kay, the Sato, the Matt.
Yeah.
You remember who he was, right?
No.
Oh, you don't remember wee Billy Elliot?
No.
You don't remember Billy Elliot?
No, that was Billy Elliot?
It was.
I'm sorry, I backed off the mic, you guys, because shocking.
Shocking. That's our little Billy. Giving the old whip to the
I do have to
the
say.
hind. Fanny means something else. No, he whipped the fanny too, I think.
Oh, yes. She whips her own fanny
the English
for sure
fanny.
in this.
Her fanny is like a wound at the end. It's so overused.
It's so sad. The extent to which he was the boils on her vagina, yeah, that's sad because, well, we'll get.
I thought it was happy, but I guess we're just different.
Okay. It wasn't sad because she couldn't have sex anymore. It was sad because I don't know what the disconnect was in her mind where she was somehow punishing herself because she could go to the doctor and get help with that. She never talks about ever going to a doctor except for the one time when she wants an abortion and is denied one. Otherwise...
Are they in England? England? As some people pronounce it? Is that where she lives? Because it's not clear, is it?
No, and... Christian Slater didn't have an accent.
It seemed like he had a very vague Irish accent.
It's actually the souls of the trees that we see in the winter.
Or that's what he was going for. I noticed that and like Jamie Bell, I think is actually Irish, seemed to have a very vague, his accent was kind of vague too.
Yeah, I can hear that.
Shia LeBeouf's accent, I think he was trying to be English. It was a little muffled. As far as directing accents, I don't know if like Lars is all that hot at it.
I don't think he cares that much.
No, it doesn't seem like it.
Which is fine. It's never upset me. I was impressed with Shia LaBeouf in this.
Oh, yeah?
But what I was trying to say is that though the things that Kay does are very extreme, he was pretty fucking amazing.
The first rule is that I don't fuck you. And there isn't any discussions about that.
Then what do you get out of it?
That's my business, and I don't want you to mention it again. The second rule is that we have no safe word. Meaning that if you go inside with me, there is nothing that you can say that will make me stop.
That was actually very good.
Party!
Lars von Trier represents sexuality in his movies. It never feels actually erotic, right? And I expected like a lot of sex with zero eroticism. But I guess if you got enough beautiful naked people around and you see enough dick sucking and fucking, it's going to make the genitals twitch a little bit. There is some eroticism here. I think it is clear. But it's just interesting that up to what we've seen up to this point, that a lot of the sexuality just seems like, and it does, and some of this feeling is in this movie, just like watching two dogs fuck in the middle of the street, right?
Yeah.
There's something just very direct and blunt about the way he often portrays sexuality. But this one is so relentless in its sexuality that there are erotic moments in here, I would say.
There definitely are. There is so much sex, though, that the truly erotic moments, you can kind of pull them out. They're even more obvious to me.
They're not that many compared to the length of time we spend watching this movie.
For sure.
But you liked Mr. LeBeouf in this movie pretty good.
I thought he was great in this.
You know,
I've never really seen him in anything because I've avoided the Transformers. I wasn't a fan of him when I was a kid. And so I've never really seen him in anything. No, never saw it.
Which is like a prequel to this.
He fills all of them.
Folks, we're not going through the details of this movie.
No
we'll
fucking
do
way.
some threads and we'll talk about actors we like in certain moments, but we're not going to, because we talked about the full director's cut. We sat, we slotted out 6 fucking hours and we watched parts 1 and 2 all at once. Director's cut, 5 hours and 20 minutes. This will probably hold the record for longest movie that we are going to discuss for a long time, at least until we finally get to that 6-hour Soviet-made War and Peace movie. But who knows? I have not scheduled that, so it's going to be a long time.
I think I can handle a 6-hour movie once a year. I do appreciate that though this is a 6-hour movie, it is broken out into 2 parts.
5.5.
5.5. but
Half hour makes a
still,
lot of difference.
Theatrical release of this movie was right at 4 hours and maybe a minute in 2 parts, and it came out at the same time, I believe, but showed separately in theaters. So you would go see one, and then you could schedule a different time to go see 2. You weren't expected to watch it all in one fell swoop necessarily, although I'm sure it was scheduled so that you could. This movie explores different kinds of sex. Our main character, Charlotte Gainsbourg, is the self-proclaimed nymphomaniac, but we also, Stellan Skarsgård is asexual, or representing that through 99.9% of the fucking movie. And you've got Kay, who's the sadomasochist character. You've got P, who is the young girl played by Mia Goth, who is her first lesbian relationship that we see.
Mia Goth's first real movie, too.
Jerome is her love, but they've fucked. He was the first guy that she ever fucked. She went to him and said, "Will you fuck me?" And he did. And then later they met up at a job where she wanted him and he wanted her first and she didn't. And then she wanted him and he didn't want her.
He keeps looping around in her life.
When they finally come back together, she does not have an orgasm the entire time they're in a relationship. They're in a relationship for years. They have a baby. Their kid is 2 or 3 when they split. And so there's at least 4 years where she does not have an orgasm. She says that she cannot feel her cunt. Hell yeah. The second that he's fucking her. It's great until she goes numb.
Yeah.
And he tries and tries. He even tells her to go fuck other people. But there is an implication that the first time she comes is the night she leaves him. And that's not even sex. That's with Kay through...
Yeah, he allowed
sadomasochism, because she's exploring everything because she can't find her orgasm.
At one point, he has erectile dysfunction, and he's like, I cannot match her
because she's trying to fuck him constantly.
And so he lets her just go. And this part seemed weird because when we first meet Jerome, as played by Shia LeBeouf, he's a teenager, so everyone's kind of dumb at that point. And then he's a little older, like a Nepo hire at his uncle's firm.
And he thinks he's a hot shit.
Vague job firm as exists in Von Trier movies. Yeah, and he's a ding dong. He just seems like an idiot, and he almost seemed too thoughtful for a second.
Well, he had his heart broken. In the second
part of the movie,
he had his heart broken.
Yeah.
When he comes to her finally at the end, he had gotten married. He'd run off with a secretary from the firm.
He can't handle it when she does go off and fuck.
Well, it's his idea, but he can't handle it, which makes sense. He loves her. He wants to be with her. She loves him in the way she can love people. I do think she loves him more than she ever loves anyone else, except maybe P at the end. Those are her 2 loves, which is why the end is so difficult for her. He has had his heart broken. He's separated from his wife. They never get married, but they're together for years. But after a while, when she is having sex with other people, he just travels all the time. So he's probably fucking other people too, but he can't be around. And then when he comes home, she even goes out when he comes home.
Shia LaBeouf, one of those weird actors, right? And I kind of like my weird actors, but he is particularly weird in a way that sometimes is a little awkward. Like I kind of side-eye him a little bit. And his career trajectory is so bizarre that we can't even really get into it here, right?
Even his relationship with Mia Goth is so weird.
Even before all that, and what the weird phases he's been through, and like he almost seems like a very self-serious person. And there's points in his past where he's trying to become like some kind of like comedic performance art, coming out of some plagiarism accusations that happened.
I remember
you remember all that shit?
Yeah, I do. I forgot.
He has managed to navigate his way out of that. But even when you look at that time where he's trying to be a little funny crawling out of that, it seems a little off, like awkward and weird. Like he's a strange guy. According to the wiki production notes that I had read, he auditioned for this movie by sending in a sex tape that he made with his girlfriend at the time. I realized that, and he was talking about how, like, you know, I want to do the Von Trier movie because I was scared out of my mind to do it. And that's what I want out of my career from here forth.
That makes sense for him to say.
And it makes sense for any actor who really wants to dig deep inside themselves to maybe want to do a Von Trier movie.
Work with someone who's going to push you out of your comfort zone so far.
I mean, if you're going to be on a set with Charlotte Gainsbourg, you know, you can't puss out because Charlotte's not going to puss out.
Oh, no.
Charlotte ain't going to puss out. I've seen her in maybe only 5 movies, and I've seen 50 nude scenes with her. So if you're going to step on the set with Gainsbourg, you better bring it. You better get DP'd if Lars asks you to get DP'd. But I realize that with Shia LaBeouf, it would be so easy to prank him, right? You could be like, put on like a Werner Herzog impression, get his number through his agent, and be like, Shia, I'm making a movie called The Shit Eaters, and you are to be the lead shit eater role, but you should submit a tape, an audition tape, of what you think the king shit eater would do and be. I think you could trick him into sending a video of him eating shit if he thinks it's going to be for like an art movie.
You cannot do that because you can get in big deal trouble.
Producers and directors, see if you can't trick Shia LaBeouf.
Do not trick anyone into sending you any videos under false pretenses. Just don't.
So the through line of this movie, we're all over the place. Please don't ask us to go beat by beat through this movie. I know some movies we do, but this one is not. She fucks a lot.
8 chapters to this movie, and she goes around in her life. But the whole thing is, at the beginning of the movie, she is near death in an alley, and Stellan Skarsgård finds her on his way home, and he takes her back to his apartment.
And then she talks about his life, and it's
her life.
Her life, and he is revealed to be an asexual man.
He's never had sex before,
maybe like 3 hours into the fucking movie.
It's pretty obvious pretty quickly.
He's just listening to the story of her life, and they're using things in his room that they see kind of remind her of things in her life. And as she's telling a story, he digresses things like, oh, that's like when you do this technique in fishing, or, oh, this is like the Whore of Babylon, and, oh, you saw these deities, and you kind of rolling your eyes a little bit.
I want to explain that, but keep going.
I feel like a lot of that works for me pretty good in the first half of the movie more than the second half. I would say that the first half of Nymphomaniac, as it presents as part 1, is actually quite good. And the second half is like, closer to mid, I would say. I mean, there's some good shit, but it starts to mid out a little bit. I mean, when you got a 5.5 hour movie, if you have 3 good hours, a mediocre hour or 2 is going to sink it pretty good.
I would say, for me, it really was the last quarter that fell really hard, because she talks about her whole life. She gets through this relationship with Jerome, and then she goes into a life of crime with Willem Dafoe. And that's when it lost me completely. Because I still liked the relationship with Jerome, because I liked the stuff with Kay. I like the under secret sex stuff that no one knows about. You go in a door that's closed and you don't use your real name. It's interesting.
I do agree with you on that take when she becomes more criminal. It is that aspect where we see Von Trier like simplify these little things like that, and to where it just seems so vague. The worst of this movie is probably the last half hour to me.
Yeah.
Though I did think it was funny when Mia Goth pissed on her.
Party! Yes. Well, to explain that.
Do we have to?
Well,
no, we don't. We don't have to explain that.
Well, because I said earlier the end is really difficult for her. It's because she's in love with Mia Goth, and she's always been in love with Jerome, even though they couldn't work it out, or she has some feeling for him. They end up fucking, and then fuck in front of her. He beats the shit out of her, and then Mia pisses on her. So it's like her story could be completely real, or she could be very much embellishing for story's sake, which he accuses her of a couple of times. But some of the stuff that she says, if she's honest about not really knowing about religion or whatever, she couldn't make it up.
And Stellan Skarsgård character, he's so well read. He seems to he's like a lit professor practically. He just knows a lot of information because he ain't been out getting pussy his whole life. He's just been in his little alley apartment where no one can hear them.
He just studies.
Now,
he reads all the time.
Straight on in the beginning, even when he said he was asexual, I was like, something's going to happen. Either they're just going to fuck or he's going to get weird on
I thought he was maybe a murderer.
Maybe
I
that
thought
too.
he was trying to get her story, and then he was gonna kill her.
Based on how he described the intimacy and the privacy of the environment, I can see why you thought that.
He talks about how no one can hear you make noise in that room.
But before we jump to that end part, let's go through a montage of all the sex stuff, right? When she's a teenager, her and her friend, they have a bet where they can fuck a bunch of dudes and they do it for bags of candy. One
of the erotic moments for me is when she gets the man who says no to her. She goes down on him.
Yeah.
And that was erotic because he could not resist her.
That was pretty erotic.
And she gives him a blowjob, and the whole thing is that he hasn't come for weeks because he's trying to get home to his wife so they can make a baby.
Jo, as the Charlotte Gainsbourg character, half the movie up to where she's like 30 is played by Stacy Martin, who is not a teenager, we should point out.
Right, but not a teenager.
She gets wet when her dad dies. That's fun.
Stellan Skarsgård does so basically the whole thing is she's telling him all these stories because she says she's the worst person in the world, and she's basically trying to convince him of that, and
we already saw that movie. We already saw the worst person
and
in the world.
Honestly, that person
wasn't
that bad. She's trying to convince him that she's the worst person in the world.
I've consciously used and hurt others for the sake of my own satisfaction. And what I've told you so far only begins to suggest that.
But when you told the story, you were cheerful, full of humor. But the only thing you've done, except giving a few people an experience to remember, is that you relieved us from his load.
And he keeps giving her these outs. And even in that moment when she talks about how she got wet when her dad died, she calls it, I lubricated. He says to her, emotions and bodies are weird, and it's actually pretty common to have a sexual response to extreme grief. People often fuck when they're sad. They want that connection. So I do get that. There is a point where she's having sex with 10 people a night, and there's this montage of her with multiple different men giving them all the same line that she's never come before. They were her first. So she's getting her fix from them because she wants to fuck, and in turn she's giving them what she knows will make them feel good. Although the responses she gets are so amazing, because one guy actually says, well, that makes me feel good that I did that for you. One guy tells her he loves her, and another guy goes, oh yeah, I hear that a lot.
It is interesting how her blatant sexuality, she doesn't care who she's fucking. But when people try to present things to her in certain ways, the contrast to her weird sexual honesty is it makes them seem more full of shit and more pathetic, Yeah. But I want to bring this up because I'm afraid I'll forget it. But I think a genuinely hilarious, darkly funny scene was when she tries to get this guy she's fucking to go away by being like, oh, you'll never leave your family.
Yes.
And the guy shows up with his family, and it's Uma Thurman playing the cuckolded wife or whatever.
And they're 3 small children.
And she goes on this very passive-aggressive. It might be worth it to watch this. I think it's in part 1. It might be worth it to watch this just to watch that scene, because it's very dark because children are watching their family fall apart. But the way she is in this scene, and the way she's just the way she passive-aggressively speaks around it, and is like,
I do hope it's all right if the children call their father Daddy here. If you prefer, they can call him or simply the man. To be honest, my first thought was never, ever to let either of you see the children. But then I changed my mind. I thought it only right that their father be confronted by the little people whose lives he has destroyed.
Oh, no. Here, are you okay with being around my children from here on out?
We don't want to make you uncomfortable. Are you okay with them calling their father Daddy in your house?
It's genuinely fucking hilarious.
She takes them in the bedroom and says,
would it be all right if I show the children the whoring bed? After all, they also have a stake in this event. You need to see it, right? Let's go see Daddy's favorite place.
Children, look at the whore bed. Really? take in everything around you because it will serve you later in therapy.
My favorite scene.
Amazing.
And the part where she abandons her child's my second favorite scene. And then the abortion is my third favorite scene.
Okay. I still want to talk about the triptych. And then we can talk about the abortion and the leaving her child.
The polyphonic.
Or the other way. So, yes. So, he plays her a piece of music and talks about how there's these 3 parts of the music. And so, she says, okay, well, I can use that for my story. So, she talks about 3 very different sexual experiences. And the first is with this man who we don't really see them like penetration sex, but he goes down on her. He bathes her at one point. He is caring for her, and she really likes him. When she sees his car on the street, she feels safe. There's a security with this man. He wants to take care of her. He will sometimes show up an hour early and just sit on her couch with flowers and wait for her to be done with the other guy that she's fucking. She's scheduled these men. They're not paying her, but she's scheduled them hourly as though this is a business. The second guy is, she says, the only guy she ever waited for. And he's more raw animal sexuality. She has no control with him. And that's the only person that she doesn't know what to expect from. And that's exciting. And then the third is Jerome, because that's the love part.
Because she actually loved him, yeah.
She loved him, but with him who she loved, she could not come. So there is definitely her friend told her when they were younger that the secret ingredient to sex is love. That makes it better. But for her, it ruined it.
She definitely presents herself as embracing of her addictions as opposed to other people in like a sex addicts group that maybe want to try to manufacture their lives in a different way. She finds them to be offensive.
Oh, yeah.
A little melodramatic, this scene, I felt like, but it just reiterates the point that she just is unapologetically is who she is. And I mean, she proves that when I guess her husband works nights, she's going to go visit the sadist Kay
between 2 and 6 a.m. and she has to just sit and wait until he's ready for her. So she leaves her child alone
because the babysitter doesn't come, and she just leaves the kid. And then he comes home at once. And Lars is fucking with us because he's making us think it's going to be like the Antichrist kid death over again.
Because the kid gets out of the crib, walks over to the open window, and it's fucking snowing again.
But he's so fucking with us there. But Jerome shows up and grabs the child. The child's okay. So he's like, gives her the ultimatum, like, if you
the next
leave
night,
again.
Yeah, it's Christmas.
If you leave again, we're gone.
Yeah.
She fucking leaves.
She fucking leaves. She goes in and looks at the baby, and he goes in behind her and is like, is this goodbye? And she can't even say it. It's a really good scene, though. And then she leaves, and the second she has cut the ties, she goes to Kay. He gives her the worst beating that he gives her, and she comes. Then she says she never went back to Kay again, but she started fucking people again. Then she gets pregnant.
So, yeah, she has an abortion at home.
This scene, I have to talk about this scene.
Props to Lars for at least having the restraint to not have the aborted fetus like turn its head or say anything. So I guess there's some restraint there.
Okay. She at one point studied medicine. She has a really great relationship with her father who loved trees, and there's a whole other story there. But she wanted to follow in his footsteps, so she went to medical school. She saw abortions being performed, so she knows the technicality of an abortion. She goes to the doctor and says, he tells her she's pregnant, and she says, get it out of me. And they make her go talk to a sociologist, psychologist. Someone has to give her permission to get an abortion, and I do agree that this is ridiculous. If you're of a certain age and you can say, I want this, you should be able to just get it without justifying yourself.
This is why I ask where they're at.
Well, in a hospital, that could be a thing, or depending on the time. It depends on where you go and how careful they're trying to be. And again, like you said, what state or country you're in. But I do also think she could have found a clinic somewhere else that would give her an abortion. But her being who she is, she gets pissed and she goes home and decides to give herself an abortion.
Coat hanger. She hooks it in the first try, though. That's pretty good.
She does. This was a very rough scene.
Is this the most relentless Von Trier movie we've discussed so far?
Yes.
That abortion scene is fucking rough.
And you do see the fetus.
Yeah. Oh, there's nothing you don't see in this movie.
It is horrifying, but there are other times where he nails something so specifically. The sweat on her thighs when she is doing this. There's just bits where it's like the detail of the agony that she is in. She is an amazing actress.
Yeah,
to act this scene had to be so fucking difficult, and I hope he didn't make her do it all day.
I want to also point out that this movie, according to what I read online, cost him $5 million. There's 20 different production companies across Europe that help make this happen.
He's got big names in this, too.
People are probably taking pay cuts that they probably would demand more from other studios to work with him. This is another scenario where he made a movie for around $5 million, and if you combine rentals, DVD sales, and going to the theater for both parts, it definitely made its money and more. So he's able to do these movies. He's the best example of what you can do with a small budget, but he also has his reputation, and that reputation amongst actors to get you to go into the next level if you're really serious about your acting. The lady from Breaking the Waves, she only worked with him once because that just about fucked her up doing that role. And I think still, even to this point, the balance of like the brutality and the sweetness is still the most balanced in that movie here. And I think Melancholia is fairly close, but still Breaking the Waves is better. But I think in comparing Von Trier mainly to himself, in criticizing him against himself, that he really had an opportunity to balance that brutality and that sweetness here. And he kind of, I feel like he flubbed it at the end. Yeah. Because after 5.5 hours, her and Stellan Skarsgård's character, she kind of comes around to his compassion. She feels something that's different, like a real almost friendship seems to form there. She
says he may be her first true friend.
Yeah, and it really is a beautiful thing to see. But man, Lars von Trier, this guy might not have good days, being that this is the Depression trilogy. Yeah. Because it's still, I think the movie would have hit and would have done well, especially when you have this beautiful scene where, you know, her father points out to her in a flashback his tree that is kind of forked.
A soul tree. He says everyone has a soul tree.
And she finds her tree later when she's compelled to go up a mountain. And it's a tree that just looks disjointed, like it's going off to the side.
Split in a bunch of ways.
Like it could be like a 2-pronged tree, but it's just one going this way. And there is like moments that are actually pretty beautiful and sweet.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the movie, Stellan Skarsgård and her, she's like, okay, that was a great story. Thank you for being there for me. It was interesting to tell this story out in this way for the first time.
And she says, if it's okay, I would like to sleep now. Because she's in his bed, and he says, absolutely, I will make sure no one disturbs you.
And sure enough, I mean, you get that something's going to happen here. But Stellan Skarsgård comes out Winnie the Pooh style. This guy is supposed to be asexual, and then he's beaten off and like rubbing her ass, and she's like, what are you doing? And she pulls out a gun that she couldn't shoot someone else with earlier in the story and cocks the gun, and she shoots him off camera. It goes black.
And then you hear her run, and you hear this cat door, because he talks about when someone leaves the building, the cat door squeaks. And that's the last thing you hear is this cat door squeaking.
Not that I mind watching Stellan Skarsgård's uncircumcised penis chub out.
That's fine.
But it's like, this almost seemed a little too predictable for Von Trier.
I thought he plays with religious themes within this movie even, and in his other stuff. There are sometimes these...
Religion pops up in like every movie.
But even like Breaking the Waves, there's a fucking miracle.
It's a cult.
You know? And there's so much discussion about that in this. The fact that he's in a monk's room. His room, everything is very specific and ties to what she's talking about. He found her in an alley almost dead. When he comes in I thought this until he touched her ass. No joke. That he was an angel or death or something. Not an angel necessarily, but I thought that she was dead. Because he also talks through it about how he's the best impartial judge for her because he doesn't have any preconceived notions about sex.
Right, you kept thinking he was going to kill her.
I thought he was going to kill her, but then at the end, when he put her to bed and he comes back in and he's got this crisp white shirt on that he wasn't wearing before that. And there was this second, and I think he's here to let her die now or something, or kill her in that I've judged you and you're good and I'm going to kill you before you can do anything else bad because you've just like realized yourself.
He's just a pervo, a creep.
He doesn't get hard though.
He gets a chub.
He's working it though. He's
he
trying
chubs.
really hard.
I mean, I'm just thinking of the actor here, how hard that must be to even get that chub. I think Stacy Martin, I saw a quote from her that said that all the sex scenes were actually very just specific. Like there was nothing erotic about it at all.
No,
like it's just about,
it wasn't.
like when you really get behind the scenes, I hear that about porn, you know, to be professional about it is to just kind of be very dry about it, but not pussy's dry, pussy's wet. You want
lubricated.
Lube. You want lube. Nymphomaniac from 2013 by Lars von Trier. You give it 1 through 5 each, combined for best out of 10. I think it all falls down to about a 3.5. I feel like that's my nicest score. That's not a bad score.
It's not a bad score. I'm giving it a 3.
Okay. So that is a 6.5 for Nymphomaniac. Folks, check it out. Nymphomaniac. At least as good as the movies it rests between, which are Little Nicky and Roman Polanski's Oliver Twist.
Oh my God.
A few other ones would be Run Ronnie Run or Pillow Talk starring Rock Hudson and Doris Day. Nymphomaniac is at least as good as Pillow Talk.
Better than those.
With Rock Hudson and Doris Day.
I feel like you should bump it up.
It's at least as good as Casualties of War. It's at least as good as Jubilee by Derek Jarman.
Yeah.
A little bit more on the art trip there.
That makes more sense.
Folks, if you want like a really long penthouse letter, there's plenty more sex shit in this movie that we didn't get to. There's a DP in there. Everyone loves a DP, right? So
she gets
check that out.
Sandwiched at one point.
They call it sandwiching, yes. I think our next one will be getting into America, the land of opportunity. We'll be into his last 3 movies of the year. And we will talk about Dogville next, which is supposed to be fucking devastating. So, who'd have thought? Starring Nicole Kidman. All right. So check the show notes for links, other places to find us, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let us know what you think about Nymphomaniac. Are you a nymphomaniac? We promise we're not going to come rub our flaccid dicks at the end of your story. All right. I love you.
Death to all traitors.
Give Daddy your present. It's a car little dear has embroidered. I'm aware that not everyone can see it, but with the heart one can see much, however unimportant that information may be to you. Would it be all right if I show the children the whoring bed?